for coming here today and showing your interest in knowing how we use Unity Catalog at Comcast for centralized data and access management. This is Monica Raghuvanshi standing here with around 12 years of experience in big data platforms. And I work at Comcast as technical manager as well as a platform owner for various cloud as well as on-prem platforms. And Databricks is one of them. In today's agenda, I'll cover first 20 minutes in going over brief introduction on Unity Catalog and how we have designed it and actually implemented it in our organization. And the next 20 minutes, I would go over deep dive into the real-time scenarios and challenges that we were facing prior to Unity Catalog and how we leveraged UC in addressing those concerns and challenges. So let's get started. So here, if you see, in the diagram, like prior to Unity Catalog, the access governance was completely decentralized, right? Each workspace had a separate Hive metastore, which means access governance, user management, the access controls, all the policies, everything was managed at individual workspace level. As of today, we have 180 workspaces at Comcast that are spread across US, Australia, and Ireland regions. So you can very well imagine the kind of operational overhead and the amount of redundant work that teams has to perform in order to manage all these workspaces at individual level. So apart from, it's just not operational overhead, like apart from this, the decentralized architecture also causes inefficient data management, various security risks, increased operational cost, increased storage cost, and various things. Even data sharing was not straightforward. Now, Unity Catalog benefits are actually immense. It offers a single place to administer data access policies that applies across all the workspaces. And apart from this centralized access management, it has many advanced features like lakehouse monitoring, cost governance, and it automatically captures the user level audit logs. It offers secure, simplified data sharing, which is called as delta sharing. And also, it provides a feature called as data search and discovery, where you can actually tag data assets and use a search interface where you can do the searching on the basis of the tags that are applied on your assets. And apart from that, it also provides you something called as data lineage tracking. We'll go over this in detail as well, where we can actually visualize the flow of data across different data assets right from source to consumption. This is like a brief architecture, high-level architecture. If you look at the bottom here, right? When a user tries to access an S3 bucket in a cloud environment via Databricks notebook, then Unity Catalog would sit in between and it would act as a gatekeeper to ensure if the user is authorized to see that data or no. And at the top, when you see, Unity Catalog is a place where everything is just merged together. So all these services like your audit logs, your ACL stores, your Databricks user identities, your entire metadata, everything is sitting inside Unity Catalog. Now let's see how this centralized access management is achieved with Unity Catalog in terms of three basic units, on the basis of workspace management, user management, as well as data management. So here if you see, again, similar diagrams. So prior to UC, the access governance was completely decentralized, as I said. Same set of services like Hive Metastore, access management, they were all basically boxed together, and each workspace acted as an individual identity. So workspace count actually mattered at that time. Like if an organization like us, if we are handling hundreds of workspaces, then managing them individually without any common umbrella on top of them was kind of a big deal. Now, as you move from this architecture from left-hand side to the architecture on the right-hand side, you see that Unity Catalog has simplified this architecture by removing all of these overlapping services out of each of these workspaces, and it has just put them all at a central location, which is called as UC, Unity Catalog. So UC becomes that umbrella which shelters all the workspaces, and it can be like no count on it. And because of this abstraction of services at a common location, we can manage hundreds of Databricks workspaces from a single space without any additional operational overhead and redundancy. So, you can just scale up from tens to hundreds seamlessly. So this is how we have achieved centralized workspace management using Unity Catalog. Next comes your centralized user management. So this has become possible because of a concept called as identity federation, which is introduced by Unity Catalog. Now, in a non-identity federated workspace, users and groups exist locally at the workspace level. So if a user needs access to multiple workspaces, as I said before, we'll have to individually go to the workspace and then provide access to the particular user. Now with identity federation, a concept of service principal was introduced, and also users and groups, they all moved from individual workspace level to the central account level. This means we manage all of these hundreds of users on these hundreds of workspaces from one place, which is the Unity Catalog account level. So we just add them once at the account level, and then these identities get synced to the workspace in real time. So that's how the centralized user management was achieved. Next is your centralized data asset management, right? So here again, if you see, before Unity Catalog, each team's workspace had a dedicated Hive metastore, and sharing data assets across these workspaces was not at all a straightforward thing. So to achieve that, we would have to enable cross-shard access that would typically require granting access to specific workspaces and then also provisioning fixed credentials for them. So all of this was basically operationally intensive, as well as it had quite security concerns as well. Now with Unity Catalog, because of this centralized metadata layer that comes in, all of these data assets like schemas, tables, volumes, views, etc., they all can be shared across multiple workspaces seamlessly. So, and also this access control is also extremely simplified. So if you see in this particular command, the sample command that I gave, there is no need to run any complex SQL commands. Only simple grants and revoke SQL commands can do the work, and if you even don't want to do that also, you can simply use UI to do that particular granting privilege to the users. So once these permissions are basically defined at the account level, it applies across all the workspaces, right? Now the question that should come up in everyone's mind is, if this is the scenario, how do we achieve data isolation across these workspaces? So for that, Unity Catalog is providing us multiple data isolation techniques, and at Comcast, we use a combination of data isolation on the basis of storage, on the basis of environment, and on the basis of individual users. So we'll go one by one on that. So if you see in this one, here in the storage data isolation, data is physically separated at the managed storage location. So we achieve this by specifying a managed location at metastore level, catalog level, and the schema level. So the system would evaluate hierarchy for storing these particular locations from bottom to top, that is from the schema to the catalog and to the metastore. So for example, if a new table gets created by a user, Unity Catalog will determine if the storage location is assigned at the schema level at the bottom. If it's there, it is going to just go and store it there. If not, it will check for the catalog, and if it's not there as well, then it will just go and save it on the metastore level, which is like a dedicated centralized location for storage. But this particular data isolation technique is actually one of the most important techniques, I would say, because if multiple teams have to coexist under the same metastore, then this comes really handy. So at Comcast, we don't allow any kind of data storage at the metastore level. It's mandatory that every individual catalog that gets created, it has its own dedicated S3 storage. So for example, say if we have a metastore created on a region US East 1, so our metastore name is US East 1, right? There we can get say catalogs which can be created there would be like HR catalog, QA catalog, or cybersecurity catalog. Now each of these catalogs must have dedicated S3 buckets assigned to them so that data isolation across different departments is ensured. And then next thing is the storage at the And then the storage location at the schema level, basically, it is kind of optional for the teams. So for example, if I have a catalog which is HR catalog, and there would be various databases created under HR catalog, would be like employee data or CRM data or maybe sales data. So those can or cannot have dedicated storage location, because anyways they all fall under the HR catalog S3 bucket. So this is how the storage based isolation is achieved. Next is your workspace based isolation. This is another technique where we ensure that certain data sets and domains, they are never joined together. So for example, most of the companies would have this compliance policy that, production data should never be accessed from test or the development environments. And this thing is achieved using the concept called catalog workspace binding. So this concept actually overrides any user level privileges on data objects granted to a user. For example, in this diagram, if you see, for example, if there is a user at the top, right top, you see a volume created, right? So consider there is a user who has access to this volume, which is sitting under your prod database and prod schema basically, and that prod schema is sitting under the prod catalog. If you see that white arrow, there is catalog workspace binding between the prod catalog and the prod workspace. Now, say this same user also has access to the test as well as the dev workspaces as well. Now, because of this catalog workspace binding, even though user has access to all the three workspaces, he would not be able to access that volume from any other workspace except prod workspace. So this is how your workspace-based isolation is achieved. Then comes your user-based isolation. Here it's pretty easy, pretty simple to understand. You can see, like, you can just go to the UI, you can assign various permissions to individual users. And also, if you see, in this example, we are seeing we have dev catalog and the prod catalog example, right? So on the dev catalog, we have assigned all the data engineers as well as data scientists read-write access to our entire catalog. But on the right-hand side, on the prod catalog, it's just the read-only access that we have granted. So this user-based data isolation ensures that users are accessing only the data that they are entitled to see and query. Now, this is a brief, high-level, Unity Catalog roadmap. So, what are the steps basically involved when we actually decide of going to Unity Catalog and setting it up, right? So, the first thing that we'll need to do is we have to see how we are going to organize our catalogs, whether they would be department specific, whether they would be data plane specific, etc. Whatever we choose to do, and then after that, how many workspaces we are planning to link to that centralized metastore, how we would achieve identity federation. Like, for example, if we have an account, right, and in that account already all our account groups and everything are created into the Active Directory, how do we plan to migrate all these account groups from Active Directory to Unity Catalog? Then defining the main administrative roles that would be required. For example, account admins, they would be the people who would be responsible for creating the metastores, attaching various workspaces to the metastores and things like that. Then there would be metastore level admins. Those would be the people who would actually have access to everything which is sitting inside that metastore. And then comes the workspace admins. They would be like just the workspace level people who would be team specific folks. Then once this designing is done, we are going to do one-time setup where we would create that metastore in one particular region. We would join various workspaces to it. Then we would go with creating various Unity Catalog objects that would be your catalog creations and schema creations and things like that, providing various accesses to folks, to the right folks, to these particular Unity Catalog objects. And also at the same time, we can also think about migrating from your legacy Hive metastore to your Unity Catalog metastore. So here, when you create a metastore, right? For creating a metastore, if you see on the workspace tab, the bottom one, here is the place where all your workspaces and along with their basic details like what particular storages are attached to them, and those details are provided here, as well as the metastore they are attached to. So any workspace which does not have a metastore attached to it is considered as non-Unity Catalog enabled workspace. So here the second one is the one which does not have any metastore linked to it. That means it does not have Unity Catalog on it. Now, when we create a metastore on a particular region, we have to provide the S3 location. This is mandatory, a dedicated S3 bucket to it. And then we also need to provide an IAM role. This would act as like your authentication entity to access that particular S3 bucket. And we also provide the region in which we are going to create this meta store. Now this is your basic object model, right? At the top, if you see, it is basically the hierarchical model of all your Unity Catalog objects. So here, metastore is at the top level container where metadata for everything is stored. This manages access and governance for all the data assets. In typical case, we would only create one metastore per AWS region, and like any number of workspaces in that region, we would just link whatever we need to in that particular region, and this is going to provide us a regional isolation via this metastore creation. But these metastores cannot be treated as the units of data isolations. Data isolation basically begins from your catalog level. So if you see the next level or the next layer is our catalog, here this would act as our first data isolation identity, where we can create multiple catalogs inside that metastore and attach individual S3 buckets to it to provide your storage-based data isolation. And then third comes your schema, where again this is your kind of second layer of object hierarchy. And here you can create multiple schemas inside that catalog. So schemas are nothing but databases which are kind of logical groupings of tabular data, which is like tables and views, and non-tabular data, which is volumes and your machine learning models and things like that. So example of databases inside, as I already said, inside, for example, it's an HR catalog, then we can have sales data, CRM data, and things like that. So all of those would be considered as schemas, also known as databases, basically. So once your metastore is created, we proceed with creating various other Unity Catalog objects, and it begins with your catalog creation. And there, as I said, whenever you create a catalog, first thing you need to attach is a managed storage to it. And in order to create a managed storage, you need two things. First is your IAM role. So you go to your AWS account, you create an IAM role, and that IAM role, make sure it has access to the S3 bucket, which is going to be your dedicated catalog S3 bucket. So here, if you see in the first form, this is the form for creation of storage credentials, basically. So once you provide your IAM role details here and submit it, you get storage credentials. This storage credential, when you put in the second form, which is your creation for external locations, it is going to give you external locations where you would put this credential as well as your S3 bucket details, and this is going to give you external location. Finally, when you are working on creation of your catalog, this is where you are going to provide your external location and your catalog name and everything, and you finally get a data isolated catalog created for yourself. Now, once your catalog is created, you are going to bind it to various workspaces. So as soon as a new catalog is created, by default, this all workspace have access checkbox is enabled. That means all your workspaces would have access to this catalog by default, but if you want to ensure environment-based data isolation, you have to disable that, and you have to just make sure that you attach it to only to the workspaces from which you want this catalog to be accessed. Once all of this is done, final thing is again providing access to your individual users on the basis of like usually once you reach this level, all your other Unity Catalog objects like schemas and tables and all, so those permissions are usually delegated to the end users, and they would use these permissions or privileges to work on their activities or the projects as needed. Now this entire Unity Catalog onboarding, right from catalog creation till assigning permission to the user, we have automated it at our org. So like when I talk about all of these individually, it looks like lots of steps, right, that we need to perform. But if I just take an example in this particular flow, if I take an example that a user who wants to create a new table. So here what happens is, we have a user interface called as DX portal. User goes there and user submits a request for a new table creation, for example. So in that request form, user would be asked to provide some basic details like what workspace you are going to access that particular table from, and also what is the entire name, like what is the catalog schema and the entire table name, and who all are the folks who would need access to that particular table. Once all of these details are captured from that request form, we would, the Lambda function is going to fetch all these required details from that particular payload, and it's going to trigger an API call at our end. That API call is first and foremost thing, it will go and check that if Unity Catalog is enabled on that workspace or no. If it's not, it will go and enable it. And likewise, once that is done, it is going to create a service principal which would have all the admin rights in order to perform the further Unity Catalog object creation functionalities. So once that service principal is created, we are going to, this service principal is going to make sure that whether, that particular, on the basis of the name that is given by the user, if that catalog is existing or no, whether, and if the catalog is not existing, then it would trigger another API call where it is going to fetch details related to the S3, but dedicated S3 bucket needed for that particular catalog. So in this way, it would create the catalog, and then it would go to the schema level, see if it's existing or no. If not, it will create that. And finally, it will just go and create the table for you. Then it would assign all the users and the permissions and whatever, like we have predefined permissions on any new table that a user asks for. So all of that is basically automated and is happening with click of a button in our org as of today. So then next thing is, yeah, we have been using Databricks for years in Comcast, and because of that, we have like lots of data is sitting in our legacy Hive metastore currently. So before, like this legacy Hive metastore, we might need to migrate, or it is recommended by Databricks to migrate these legacy Hive tables into the Unity Catalog tables. And for that, we have got multiple options, and Databricks has actually done a great job in helping various teams in how to do the upgrades and all. So here, the tool that we use at Comcast is called UCX tool, and this is basically used when we want to perform bulk upgrade of Hive tables to Unity Catalog managed tables. And Databricks recommends this tool for most of the upgrade scenarios. But if we want to do the upgrade in a simpler way, like if we just want to quickly upgrade a few tables to external tables and all, then we can use, we also have a Catalog Explorer upgrade wizard which we can use. And also, if you don't want to use UI and if you want to use some SQL commands and things like that, there is also sync SQL and clone SQL commands depending on whether you want to upgrade to managed table or the external tables. So this was basically all about the basics, right, that I talked at the starting. So now I would like to quickly switch to some major security concerns that we were facing in pre-Unity Catalog world and how we got them addressed by Unity Catalog. So from here it's going to be it will get a little interesting. So the best thing about Unity Catalog that we have observed is data access is tied at user level and not at cluster level. And this single thing has actually helped us in fixing a lot of problems. So if you see here, this is, the first thing is Hive metastore table access control. So prior to Unity Catalog, if you look at this diagram, each Databricks workspace was deployed with a built-in Hive metastore which was tied at the cluster level, and it was not tied at user level, right? So any user who is having access to the cluster, he can get access to all the data which is managed by built-in Hive metastore because there was no data isolation available, and this posed a great security concern for us. Now, solution to this problem is given by Databricks was to enable table access controls on the clusters in order to ensure that the access is scoped down at the table level and there is no, that wide access provided to the clusters. But this table access control thing also had its own limitations. Like when you enable this, you have to ensure that your users are restricted to use only the table access control enabled clusters. And to ensure this, you cannot provide cluster creation rights to your users. And this would definitely, this would upset lots of users on the Databricks workspaces. And apart from this, there was an operational overhead where your secret and scope management needs to be done. Every cluster needs to be given read access to the credentials and things like that. So Unity Catalog has fixed this problem by simplifying access controls using data isolation techniques. So if you look at this data explorer on the right hand side, we see, right, there is this dev catalog. It has got all of those schemas created under it, and inside that IoT we can see the tables, volumes, everything. So this kind of makes like the architecture is pretty clean, and also this approach is more simplified and secure. So if you look at this, look at the command at the bottom. When a user queries a table in Unity Catalog, the user is going to use a proper 3-level namespace where he is going to specify the catalog name, the database name, as well as the table name. But without Unity Catalog, the same command, user is parsing through the entire Hive metastore and the entire database, the default database, if he wants to read just one single table, which is customers in this case. So the next security gap that we faced at Comcast was IAM role credential pass-through. I think many of you, whoever has worked, has been using Databricks for some time, everybody would know this. So here what happens is, a Databricks cluster can access S3 data using an IAM role identity. So if I want to access multiple S3 buckets from a Databricks cluster, I would go to my AWS account, I would get an IAM role. That IAM role, I would put all the IAM policies and everything to ensure that, you know, all those S3 buckets has access. IAM role has access to all those S3 buckets, and then I'll just attach that IAM role instance profile to my Databricks cluster. Now, any user who is having access to that cluster can get authenticated to all of these S3 data via that attached instance profile. Also, apart from the security gap, the connection that happens, it would stay intact until that particular cluster is terminated. So it's like kind of a long-lived connection as well. So this is long-lived connection. We have the security gap, and also this brought in was operational overhead for us. So in this approach, we end up maintaining multiple instance profiles as well as PAR configs for each cluster launch. Now what happens with Unity Catalog? Unity Catalog has addressed this concern by eliminating the need of instance profile and Spark configs on the clusters altogether. Like, we don't have to do anything of this. Instead of maintaining instance profiles at the cluster level, Unity Catalog would shift to a single instance profile which is attached at the metastore level, which is at the account level. So what happens is, this IAM role acts as a global role that has got wide access. Now, anytime any user wants to access any specific S3 data, user is going to assume this metastore IAM role identity for authentication, and Unity Catalog is going to enforce the scoped down user level data access policies to achieve fine-grained access before granting the final access to the user. So if you look at this, the life of a query, which is depicted here, as soon as a user runs a SQL query, the cluster will forward that to Unity Catalog. Unity Catalog will check the metadata and also grants at the user level and see if that table exists and if the user has access to the table or no. Now, say for example, if user has access to it, then what happens is, this user will assume the metastore IAM role identity, using which Unity Catalog will create a short-lived authentication token and send the metadata of this particular table as well as the token to the cluster back. The cluster will use this token and the metadata to finally query the actual data from the S3 and will enforce the user access policies before sending the final results to the user. Now, all of this is happening, and at the same time, the yellow arrow that you see, your Unity Catalog is also writing the activity in the audit logs and capturing all these events, like what data access was accessed by which user, at what time, what date, and all of these are automatically captured. We don't have to do anything explicit about it. So this is the beauty, basically. The last thing last scenario that I want to cover, this is the most interesting one actually. So what happens is in Comcast, Databricks is used for both cloud as well as on-prem data compute. We have been using Privacera as our central security governance tool on top of Databricks. But the problem is Privacera does not support on-prem access. So for the scenarios where, say, I need to read from S3 right to on-prem or vice versa, I can't do this using Privacera. And because of this, in the pre-Unity Catalog world, we had to maintain two different access patterns for on-prem and cloud data access, as you see here. So in this diagram, Privacera is used only for cloud access, and there is another tool which is called as Custom Broker, which we use for on-prem access. Now here you might see that Custom Broker is also providing cloud access, but the thing is Custom Broker has its own limitations, and because of which Privacera is always recommended tool for cloud access. So that's a different story altogether. But if you see here for AWS S3 access, just on the right hand side if you see, authentication is tied at cluster level using SAT, client ID and scope concept. So in this approach, the first thing that we have to do is each Databricks cluster needs to have Privacera or Custom Broker jars installed on it. Then at every cluster launch, we need to supply client ID and scope details, using which a JWT token is generated, and Privacera will use this JWT token to authenticate the cluster for data access. Now again, this connection is also long-lived and it would stay intact till the cluster is terminated, and also any user with access to this cluster can get access to the data. On the right hand side, the Custom Broker side, if you just see the piece for on-prem access, that access works on access key and secret key concept. So again, on the Databricks cluster, we'll need to attach Spark configs, which is going to supply the access and the secret key details. And using these keys, a session token is created, which is going to grant access for the on-prem data. Now this Spark config setup that is required for on-prem access, this cannot be done on a cluster which is already enabled for Privacera because it's not supported. Now how Unity Catalog solved this problem? When Unity Catalog got integrated with Privacera, it moved Privacera completely out of the scope of cluster. So with UC, as I said, access is tied to user level identity and not at cluster level. So the concept of client ID, scopes, concept of JWT token, everything just goes away. So no need to install any jars, no need to install any Privacera policies on the cluster. Because we don't need to install all of this, the cluster is not logged by Privacera, and the cluster stays free to be used for on-prem access as well. So, this provides more secure and robust access pattern, as you can see. So here in this single access pattern, what happens is for S3 access, it will just create that short-lived IAM token that I just explained a few minutes ago. It's going to provide access in that way. And on the same cluster, we can attach the Spark configs for your access and secret key thing for your on-prem data access. So in this way, we get a single access pattern where accessing cloud as well as on-prem data becomes possible from the same cluster. So this is the beauty of Unity Catalog, and this is how it has helped us in reducing to a single access pattern for almost all our scenarios. Now, with Unity Catalog, there is this concept of two types of storage locations, right? One is managed and one is external locations. We have already discussed about it. Now, managed storage is same as DBFS associated with Hive Metastore in the pre-Unity Catalog world. Anything that lies outside this default DBFS is called as external location. Now, external locations are basically similar to your multiple mount points that we used to create in our Databricks workspaces pre-UC world, right? And we also know that how difficult it was to manage those particular mount points. So Unity Catalog basically brings in centralized management on these mount points, which are referred to as external locations. Now, these are basically key differences between managed and the external locations, but the point I'm trying to make here is, at Comcast, we basically recommend external tables more, because as the name says, like managed tables, they are fully managed by the Unity catalog, and hence they are also stored in the Metastore S3 storage. And because of that, like it's tough to access the managed tables from outside. And the external tables, because they are not sitting inside that Metastore S3, it's pretty easy to access these external tables from any external tools outside of Databricks, and because of that, they become a preferred choice, basically. Then if you see, Delta format is the only format that is supported by managed table, and hence, because external tables, they support multiple formats, they again become a preferred option for various AI models and other use cases. Also, if you see the drop table thing, right? So in this behavior, whenever a managed table is dropped, the table as well as the metadata of the table as well as the actual data gets deleted. But in external case, it's just the metadata that gets wiped off, but it never goes and touches your actual storage. So these are the reasons like we usually stick to the external tables. Now the last section is our data management and observability. So Unity Catalog basically provides various monitoring tools using which we can create dashboards and study the health of our data assets and all. So I'll quickly go over a quick AI governance example here. So here, this is just a governance portal that we can create, and we can see all the basic details that that this particular portal is providing us, the basic metrics for all our tables and everything, and also it is also showing us how what all are the suggested recommendations for a particular catalog. The last example that I want to cover here is the lakehouse monitoring thing. So here with lakehouse monitoring, we can set up dashboards and alerts to automatically detect and correct lots of issues on AI models. So in this particular portal, what you see is there is some, just look at the highlighted lines, right? There is some PII data leakage into this entire table, is what we are seeing here. Now, to understand this better, if we open up our lakehouse monitoring dashboard to get a better sense of like what's going on, we see that there is an active alert there as well. When we just scroll down to see the more details about that alert, it looks like that 7.8% of the rows may have their first or last name in the user attributes column. And you can see this is clearly a PII data leakage issue. Now, how do we fix it? In order to fix this, we have to first do column masking for the column which is in question, which is that user attributes column. And for that, we need to figure out how that particular table got in here at the first place. And to know that, we have to check the lineage. So we'll open up this same table in our Data Explorer view. Here also we are seeing all those alerts, all those details, everything is visible here as well. We'll simply click on the lineage tab here. And when I click on the lineage tab, I see that this particular table, I just expand it and I see that this user attributes table is basically coming from PostgreSQL. So using this lineage graph, I can understand that I have to reach out to owner of this Postgres table, and I just have to report the issue to them. So half of my problem is sorted, it's done. Now at the same time, if I click to the downstream of this particular table, I can figure out what all data assets or systems this PI issue, this table which is corrupted with the PI data leakage is impacting. So if I click on the downstream, I see that this particular table is giving its input to a feature store table, and this feature store table is basically directly getting connected to our churn prediction model version 2. So with this, I get to understand that in order to fix this entire thing, I just have to go back to my Data Explorer and I go to this particular churn prediction model version and I just roll it back to the previous model, which is more stable. So you can see like the data lineage graph, the importance, like how powerful this tool is. This provides us end-to-end visibility into how data flows into Lakehouse from source to consumption, and also it is providing all these details in the UI within Databricks, and it also can be exported via API to other tools as well. So here, Another thing that in the summary, what we have seen here in this example is how lakehouse monitoring automatically detected our potential PII leakage, how our lineage graphs helped to understand where the PII was coming from, and what potential models, it was impacting, and finally, how we went to the data explorer to mitigate this potential leakage to the end users. And this entire workflow has, you can imagine how much time this data lineage and the lakehouse monitoring would saved us. So with this lineage graph, what we see is all the teams, whoever are the data teams, it helps a lot in doing the root cause analysis for any errors in their data pipelines and machine learning models, and significantly reduces the debugging time, and at the same time, it always keeps organizations more ready for audit and compliant things, because all these trails of data, we get ready-made trails of this data flow from right from the source to the consumption, and these are readily can be used in any kind of audit reports that your legal teams might ask you to create. So I think that is pretty much it from my side.